Okay, so it is past and we're going to make a start. So tonight is the final session in the Introducing Buddhism course for the summer term. So we've covered in this course who was the Buddha and what are the basic elements of the Buddhist religion compared to other religions. We've talked about some core elements of Buddhist teaching. We've talked about the 3 signs of being. We've talked about the 3 fires or 3 passions or 3 poisons. And then we got into the key elements of the Buddha's teaching, which is the 4 noble truths. The 4th of which is the Noble Eightfold Path, which is basically the map that tells us how to walk the Buddha's way. We then digressed to cover some interesting stuff around the wheel of life, karma and rebirth. We talked about life-to-life rebirth and moment-to-moment rebirth. And then last week we covered some Mahayana principles. We covered the Bodhisattva ideal, and we covered the parameters, which are basically another way of formulating the Noble Eightfold Path. So tonight we're going to cover a very big topic indeed, which is meditation. And we're going to learn about the theory of meditation, and we're going to do a little very short meditation session. Some of you may be already very experienced meditators, and some of you may never have meditated before. So we'll keep it very short and keep it very simple. And we'll also cover some of the things that you might want to go on to do if you want to continue a little bit further in your Buddhist practice, what sorts of things you might start by doing and where you might go to get further guidance. Okay, so before we go to meditation, tonight's lesson, we're going to talk about last week's class where I set you some homework and I asked you to do a little bit of bowing. Bowing is a very important element in a Buddhist practice, particularly actually in the Zen practice. We spend a lot of time learning how to bow and practicing bowing. And I was asking you to try bowing at home, particularly when you found yourself overwhelmed by those 3 fires, those 3 passions. Maybe do a little bit of bowing just to see how you got on. Now, quite an interesting thing about bowing is that in the West, we find bowing an incredibly difficult thing to do. I remember giving a talk at the Zen Center in St. John's Wood, and down in the meditation hall there, and there's a very beautiful statue of the Buddha in there. In fact, it's the one that's on the first slide in these presentations. And as you walk into the meditation hall, everybody bows to the Buddha, because that's what we do. And I had a couple of friends who are joining me for the talk I was giving, and one of them was interested but not actually a Buddhist, and he said I couldn't bow. Everyone else was bowing, but he just couldn't do it. He said, I hope it didn't seem disrespectful, but I just couldn't. That was very interesting. And then the second story goes way back to when I went to the summer school a long, long time ago. And the summer school, I'll tell you about a little bit later in the evening. But there are lots of people there from different schools of Buddhism, Theravadins and Tibetans and Zen Buddhists. But we were all doing our meditation, coming into the hall and bowing. We were bowing to the cushion, bowing to the room, and then sitting down. And one of the Theravadan women came up to me afterwards and she said, I can't bow to the cushion. I can't. I only ever bow to the Buddha. And I was very, very new to Buddhism very new. And even I thought, that doesn't seem quite right. You can only bow to the Buddha. Why can't you bow to the cushion and to the rest of the room and your classmates like everyone else? So people have this very, very strong views about bowing, what it means and why we do it, and whether you can and can't do it. Whereas, of course, if you go into the East, go to Japan, it's very, very, people bow all the time. It's very natural. Anyway, for us, it's a very good thing to do to get your head down into a bow. It actually reminds us that we're not the most important thing, that there is something bigger than us, life, the universe, the Dharma, whatever it is, that it's not all about us, I, me, my attitudes. And something about the bowing that brings my head down and allows me to lay down my thoughts and my opinions can be extremely helpful when we're feeling a bit stressed and a bit overwhelmed. So a little bit of bowing is a good thing to do. And when you come into a more formal Buddhist practice, you might want to formally bow to the Buddha. If you set up a little shrine in your room, in your house, or bow at the beginning and the end of each of your meditation sessions, it's a very nice thing to do, a very helpful thing to do. Just sort of collects your heart into the right, so that you have the right intention and the right attitude, if you like, to your practice. So we tried a bit of that last week, and I hope some of you found it interesting and perhaps even helpful. So meditation, the theory of meditation. Meditation is a very important part of our Buddhist practice, very important, but it isn't the whole of the Buddhist practice. So it's only one element, although it is a very important and key element. So why do we meditate? Well, I think you've probably, in some of the exercises I've set during the course, realized that when you sit quietly and look at what's going on inside, that there's an awful lot going on in our minds. Our minds are in constant chatter and turmoil. It's actually almost impossible to be here and now in the present moment, because we spend so much of our days lost in our thoughts, either thinking about what's happened earlier in the day or in the past, planning what's going to happen in the future, thinking, planning. It takes us out of the present moment, and that means that we miss what's going on now in our lives. And of course, when you're in your thoughts, like here in the forest, you are almost trapped in that web of often sort of delusions, imagination, stuff that's going on that isn't actually real, because your thoughts are not real, they're just thoughts. There's no more significance to a thought than there is to a sound that comes in. You hear traffic in the street, it's just a sound. Your thoughts come and they go. But the trouble with the thoughts is that we imagine that we are thinking those thoughts, and we become trapped in them. We get carried away into those stories, those memories about the past, those imaginations about the future. And once you're trapped in those thoughts, you can't stand back and observe them. And there's a Tibetan master, Mingyur Rinpoche, who says, if you're being trapped, being in your thoughts, it's like standing in a river, a fast-flowing river. It's about to sweep you away. But if you step out of the river and observe the river, you're not in the river. You're not going to be swept away. You can observe what's going on without being carried away by it. And there's another contemporary Zen teacher who describes this as the difference between standing under a waterfall with everything showering down upon you, or standing behind the waterfall and observing it all. And it is actually very helpful to learn how to step away from those thoughts and observe them, rather than feeling that you are obliged to think them and get caught up with them and travel away down the river, wherever it's going, etc., etc. But unfortunately, we are habitual thinkers, and let's be clear, in meditation, we're not trying to stop our thoughts. You can't stop your thoughts. What we're trying to do is observe them rather than getting carried away by them. But the importance of your thoughts are really summed up here in these are the first two verses of the Dhammapada, which is a series of Buddhist verses from the Pali Canon. We've actually talked about this in a previous lecture. The Buddha said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him, as the wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. If a man speaks or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows him, like a shadow that never leaves him. So it is helpful to be able to step back from our thoughts, observe them rather than being dragged away by them. But that doesn't come easily. It's not a natural situation to find yourself doing that. You have to practice. And that's where meditation takes you, into practicing to do that, to observe the thoughts rather than thinking them and getting carried away by them. And of course, what are the main things that we attract, the thoughts that carry us away and trap us? Well, of course, they are those three fires, those three poisons. We are deluded in our way of thinking because we are biased by our opinions of myself, I, me, and mine. I'm a separate being, separate from you. And what I am in this world is important and different and special. I must protect that. So that is the delusional, prejudiced, I-biased view, which is really, brings us into this world of dukkha, this world of suffering. And that delusion makes us think that there is a little person sitting up here in our brains, a kind of a CEO, if you like, running the show. We're not able to easily step back and see those thoughts where they are, things coming and going. We think there's a thinker in the middle of all of this. Someone is thinking these thoughts. This is me, this is mine, this is I, and that leads to suffering. So to get to a state where we can see an end to suffering, we have to get away from this perpetual cycle of believing in I, the ego, the self, the soul. And really that requires careful practice and study, and through meditation is one of the ways in which we do that. Lots of people meditate all around the world. There are different styles of meditation. There are different, obviously not even in Buddhism do people meditate. Lots of other religious groups meditate, and it doesn't need to be even part of religious practice. And people will tell you all sorts of marvelous things that you can achieve through meditation, centering your chakras and all of those things. And indeed, it is true, you can have some fantastic experiences in meditation, and you can have some very unpleasant experiences as well. But that is not the point, is not to get into a blissful state. And that is not the point. The point is to see things clearly. You have to accept those happy states coming and going and those difficult states coming and going, and not get trapped in any one of them. In fact, there's a story which is almost certainly apocryphal, which is about a Christian priest who was practicing meditation with a Buddhist, with a Zen Buddhist. And at the end of the meditation session, he said, "Wow, that was so wonderful. I saw the numinous face of God." And the Zen master said, "Don't worry, it'll go away. You'll get over that." So blissful, happy states will come to you when you meditate. Difficult, restless, stressed states will come to you when you meditate. The goal is just to sit through all of those things and not hang on to any of them, because we're not here to achieve superpowers, out-of-body experiences. We're simply trying to see things clearly the way things are. Now, this leads me to the 5 hindrances. Now, these are hindrances. This is a traditional Buddhist notion of what things will hinder you, not just in meditation, but actually in your Buddhist practice in general. There are traditionally 5 hindrances, and I can promise you that you will suffer each and every one of these 5, particularly if you're doing a long meditation session. So here we go. Ill will, just that general grumbling, annoyance, grievances, thinking about bad things that have happened today and how difficult the day has been, or thinking about bad things that are going to happen later on. Just generally unable to settle into meditation because you're still cross, grumpy. Maybe you're annoyed because the meditation leader is not ringing the bell fast enough and your knees are hurting. You know, inevitably when you sit long periods of meditation, there is pain. You're sitting on a cushion sometimes, your knees are starting to hurt, or you might be sitting on a chair and your back is starting to hurt, and the session is going to last for 30 minutes. And honestly, it seems a long time. Well, it seems forever, actually. I remember sitting in meditation thinking, how much longer? Counting my breath. And then you think, the meditation leader, the Jikijitsu, he's just torturing me. He knows I'm in pain. And yes, he won't ring the bell. You know, you can get very wrapped up in pain and difficulty and start focusing that hostility on what's happening out there. Or you can be thinking about, as I say, bad things that have happened in the day or bad things that are going to happen later, and ill will. That's one of the 5 hindrances. Sensory desire, thinking about what you could be doing that would be way more comfortable and easy to do. Could I make my cushion more comfortable? You know, no amount of padding and comfort is going to keep that cushion comfortable for hour upon hour. You start wanting to fiddle and plump it up and make it even higher and more comfortable. Or you start thinking about what's for lunch. You know, the meditation session takes you through to lunchtime, but the kitchen's already starting to prepare lunch. You can get those wafting smells coming, thinking, lunchtime is coming soon. Or, and this is particular to me, when I was a member of the Zen group, we used to have an all-night sitting in the first Friday in December. We used to sit all night in meditation, and almost invariably that all-night sitting would coincide with my work Christmas party. And I'd be sitting there thinking, I cannot believe I'm sitting here on a cushion all night when my colleagues at work are partying and they're drinking and having a nice meal and probably going on to karaoke next. How have I chosen this religion where we don't have a great Christmas party, we just sit all night? Anyway, sensory desire, thinking you could be doing something more pleasurable. That's another of the 5 hindrances. Restlessness and worry. Restlessness, my goodness, restlessness. I don't think it's it's really hard to believe how incredibly restless and you can get when you're having to sit still on a cushion in meditation. You start getting, it's almost irresistible that you want to leap up and rush off and do something else. You start fretting about, just the genuine sitting still is very difficult to do. Or you start worrying about stuff that you could be doing. Did I switch off the gas? Do I need to go down and let the cat in? Did I worry? Again, almost irresistible just to leap off the cushion and rush off and go and do whatever it is. That's another hindrance. It's your mind playing games with you, trying to lead you back to doing something a little bit more interesting. Doubt. You're sitting there thinking, what's the point of this? Is there any point? why am I doing this anyway? Is there any point? Is it any good? Is it getting me anywhere? Am I making any progress in my meditation? I haven't had any of those marvelous experiences that I'm promised. I don't seem to be any better at doing it than I was 5 years ago. You start having doubt in the practice. You start doubting that this religion is going anywhere for you. You start thinking, I've chosen the wrong path. And that is another of the 5 hindrances. And this is the big one, sloth and torpor. So in the Buddhist practice, being a little bit too lazy to get on and do the sitting in the first place would be one aspect. But the other thing is falling asleep in the middle of it. And this is my particular problem, is that often after I've had a busy day, if I sit down quietly, within a short time, I will fall asleep. And when you're doing this in the middle of a meditation class and the teacher is patrolling around with the big stick, this isn't a good thing to do. So sloth and torpor, just disengaging from the practice, disengaging from the meditation because you're feeling tired or lazy and you don't have the right amount of energy and vigor to put into it. So these are the 5 hindrances. And the Buddha likened these 5 hindrances to a pool of water. You can imagine the point of meditation is to try and see things clearly. So imagine looking into a really cool, crystal clear pool, and you can see through the water. You can see what's on the bottom of the pool in perfect detail. This is really the clear seeing things as they really are. But the hindrances are likened to how changes in that water. So ill will, anger, the water is boiling and bubbling, it's hot. So that stops you seeing things clearly. Sloth and torpor, that's water that's become stagnant. So there's lots of moss and algae in it. So you can't see clearly. Restlessness and worry, that's water that's being ruffled by the surface of the wind ruffling across it. So again, you can't see to the bottom. Doubt, that's water that's in a darkened place. And then sensory desire, water that's been colored by those sensory desires, those things that we're wanting to find that are more pleasant than the sitting. So those are the 5 hindrances, and of course they stop us achieving the aim of what we're trying to do, which is to see clearly. So think of that meditation as being letting that water settle, letting it become completely still, so that eventually you'll be able to see through clearly, see to the bottom. But if any of these hindrances start bubbling up or ruffling the surface or clouding the surface, then the clear seeing goes. So you've got to let it settle, let these things settle down before we can see clearly. Now, there are 5 guiding faculties which are said to be set to counteract those 5 hindrances. So obviously sloth and torpor can be the counteracting what for that is effort or virya. Doubt in the practice can be counteracted by having faith, having confidence. We can learn concentration, learning how to focus and see things clearly, seeing things with wisdom. And finally, the mindfulness, that awareness of what's going on. And that's likened to the 5 fingers of the hand. And it's the way this is taught is that the strongest of those fingers of the hand, faith, is represented here by the thumb, because faith or confidence in the Buddhist practice is very important. This is the strongest of the digits, and it's the strongest of those 5 guiding faculties. But you'll see here that mindfulness is the middle finger. That's the finger in the middle, which really supports all the others. So developing a mindful practice will support the other elements of your practice. So let's go on to talk a little bit now about how we practice meditation, and then we will do a little bit of meditation practice. So first of all, the position is very important, and it is traditionally you will be sitting on a cushion, but we'll see some other ways of sitting in a moment. And it's very important that you achieve a stable position. So you can see here that this meditator has stability. So her seat on the cushion and her two knees on the cushion below form 3 points of a triangle. So this is a very stable, secure way of sitting. She's got 3 points of a triangle, so she's not going to wobble one way or another. And you can see that her spine and her shoulders and her head are vertically above her seat bones. So everything is in balance. And this is a very comfortable way to sit. And you can be very stable and secure sitting this way. Now, you'll notice that she's sitting in what's called the full lotus. So she's got one leg on the thigh of the opposite leg and the other leg on the thigh of the opposite leg. I would have to say this is not something that many Westerners can achieve unless you have sat this way for most of your life. You will find this incredibly difficult and incredibly uncomfortable. And I would suggest to you, don't try it. Unless you are accomplished at yoga and incredibly flexible, I wouldn't do this. And I don't know many people who can sit like this, actually. Alternatively, and just as acceptable, is this, which is the half lotus. So you can see that one foot is down on the mat and the other foot is resting on the opposite thigh. This is the half lotus, which is again perfectly reasonable way to sit. And you can see again his back, his spine is vertical above his seat bones, his shoulders and his head above that. And he's got his hands here resting in his lap. You can put your hands into this position he's using here, this mudra, or you can simply clasp your hands together. It's quite a good idea if your hands are supported by something, otherwise your shoulders will start to drag down and dip forward. And before you know it, your whole body will be starting to slump over. So this is a half lotus, and this is again a very reasonable way to sit. And some people will be able to sit this way. I myself can't even do that. So I sit in this posture, which is the Burmese posture. So this is both feet are now down on the mat, but you can see again, we've got that triangular base, the spine vertical above the seat bones, the head vertical above the spine, and again, the hands resting in the lap. Sometimes you might want to make a little fold in your shirt or in your trousers just to support those hands so that they're not hanging limp and dragging your shoulders forward too far. So this is also fine. Some people can't even do this cross-legged position, and I have to say, as you get older, it does get more difficult. It is perfectly reasonable to use a meditation stool, which this chap is using here. You'll see there are some of these upstairs in the meditation hall at the Buddhist Society. So you can sit yourself onto that. That supports your seat bones. But again, the knees and the seat bones are forming a triangle. So you have this stable triangular base, vertical spine, hands held down there in the mudra. If you can't sit on a cushion, actually I should go back. Some people, rather than having the meditation stool here, will actually put the cushion between their knees and kneel on the cushion. So kneel up, put the cushion behind your thighs, sit yourself back down, and that's also fine. If you can't sit on a cushion and you want to sit on a chair, that is also fine. I really don't like this picture because the chair is on top of the cushion and it's making me feel anxious that the cushion is going to be damaged by the chair seat. I would say don't do that. Put your chair on the floor. But if you want to sit on a chair, that is fine. And sometimes if you're trying to meditate away from your usual place, you know, at work or wherever it might be, you might need to sit on a chair. But as you get older, sitting on a cushion actually does become more and more difficult. And when eventually the time comes, most of us migrate to the chair, and that's just how it is. So you'll see the woman on the left has actually got a little support under her feet so that she can keep her knees and her thighs more or less horizontal, so her feet aren't hanging down uncomfortably. That's fine. She's actually got a little cushion behind her back, and I think it's probably better not to have a cushion behind your back, not to have that support there. Just keep your spine vertical and keep that spine erect under your own efforts rather than resting back on a cushion, because there is a tendency to slump if you do that. So we're going to do a little bit of meditation now. So as I say, some of you may have meditated for many, many years, and if that's the case, then that is fine. Some of you have never meditated before, and that is also fine, but we're going to just go through how I would do a meditation session. So what I'm going to ask you to do is get yourselves into a comfortable position. I guess most of you are sitting on chairs. I would ask you to move forward in the chair so that you're maybe on the first third of the chair rather than sitting well back on the chair. Ideally, your knees will be roughly hip width apart. Your feet will be flat on the ground, and your heels will be vertically under your knees. And ideally, your thighs will be not quite horizontal, but more or less horizontal, not dipping too low, and certainly not your knees not coming up above the height of your hips. And when you're in that position, just rock yourself forward a little and backward a little bit so that you can feel that triangular stability. Just get to the point where you feel your seat bones coming into a neutral position. And then think about your back, your spine. Think about that back being vertical, that sense of just lifting up a little bit. Imagine that there's a string, a rope coming out the top of your head, and it's just drawing your head up a little bit, drawing your head up. And you can feel a little opening between the bottom of the skull and the top of the spine, just a little bit of opening there. And maybe a feeling that you could be potentially holding something between your chin and your chest, holding a tennis ball or an orange there, just keeping that in position. Let your shoulders relax. Let your elbows come down to your sides, and your hands, you can either put your hands into the mudra that we saw earlier with the palm of the left hand flat, the palm of the right hand laying on top of that, and then the thumbs coming together and touching. Or if you prefer, you can simply grasp the thumb of your left hand with your right hand. But it's important that your hands are resting in your lap and supported, that the shoulders are back a little bit, not slumping too far forward. You can close your eyes if you like, or you can leave them open, but if they're open, you should be trying to just lower your eyelids a little bit and make sure that you're looking down at a position on the floor, maybe 6 feet or so in front of you. Whichever's easiest for you, eyes open, eyes closed, it doesn't really matter. And your jaw relaxed and soft, your mouth closed, the tongue just touching against the back of your top teeth, and the tongue nice and flat, nice and broad. I'm just going to set my meditation timer, and we will just do a 5-minute meditation. So as you're sitting, just become aware of your breathing. Become aware that you're breathing in, and be aware that you're breathing out. It doesn't matter if the breath is long or short. Just let the breath come to you naturally. And you might also like to check in with the rest of your body. Can you feel your feet on the floor? Can you feel your sit bones on the cushion? Can you feel your hands clasped in your lap? Just let the shoulders drop a little bit. And bring your thoughts, bring your mind back to your breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. You might want to notice where the breath is most easy to feel. That might be at the nostrils, or it might be in the rising and falling of your stomach. Just bring your attention to that place as you breathe in and as you breathe out. You may notice from time to time that catch yourself thinking that a thought has come into your mind and you've been thinking that thought rather than being aware of your breathing. And that's fine. Just make a note of that and then come back to the breathing. Okay. Come back gently back into the room. Open your eyes. Move your fingers, move your toes. Okay. So that was 5 minutes of sitting. That actually went quite quickly, didn't it? It should have been 10 minutes. It's very nice to sit in meditation every day, and I would encourage you to make this into a daily practice. To begin with, 10 minutes is sufficient. As you get more established, you might want to sit for longer, maybe half an hour. There are various groups in the Buddhist society that you can sit with. There are guided meditations that you can find online or through apps. But I think a regular meditation sitting practice is a very important place to begin with your Buddhist practice. But it isn't the only thing. And this brings me to the story of the mirror and the brick. So this story is about a young monk who is very enthusiastic about his Buddhist practice, as indeed we all are when we first start it. And he was sitting in meditation hour upon hour upon hour. And one day the master saw him and came and sat down by him and started picked up a stone and started rubbing it on the ground, rubbing it. And eventually the young monk said, "Master, what are you doing?" And the master said, "I'm polishing this brick because I want to make it into a mirror." And the monk said, "Master, no amount of polishing will turn a brick into a mirror." And the master said, "Yes, and no amount of sitting meditation will turn a clod into a Buddha." So the point of the story is meditation is an important element of our Buddhist practice, but it isn't the only element. So by all means, sit in meditation as a daily thing, but unfortunately there is more to be done on the Buddha's path than simply sitting in meditation, pleasant though it may be. So what else do? We do something called daily life practice. So what is daily life practice? Well, some of it is things that we have already done. We've already done some of this in the course. These are things that I think are good places to start if you're starting in a Buddhist practice. So the first thing to do is to stick to some sort of regular timetable. Now, we talked about this very early on. I said, get yourself a bedtime and stick to it. And I think most of you will have realized how incredibly difficult it is to stick to a regular timetable, because I don't want to do it, even though it is my timetable. I set it up and I designed it and I've made it very elaborate. And I've even laminated and put it on the door of the fridge. I still don't want to do it because it doesn't suit me to do the timetable. In other words, to get up at the same time every day, the time that I have said I will get up, to go to bed at the same time every day, the time that I have said that I will go to bed, to meditate at the same time every day, the time that I have said I will do that. It doesn't need to be more elaborate than that. We don't have to have these incredibly rigid timetables as if we're going into a monastic retreat. Simply set yourself a getting up time, a going to bed time, and a meditation time. That's all that you need to do, just a very, very simple timetable. And you will find, without exception, that it's actually very, very difficult to keep to this, because this little I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. You start really kicking against it the instant almost that you've actually set it up. So before you know where you are, your getting up time will have slipped, your going to bed time will have slipped, and just occasionally You don't think you want to do any meditation at all, let alone at the time you've set yourself. But that's just letting my own opinions keep in control. Part of this is to undermine that notion that I am in charge and that I can do everything that I choose to do without exception. You know that isn't true. You've seen it through the exercises we've set ourselves. So the setting a timetable and sticking to it really undermines that little sense of I'm the person in charge here and I'm going to make this happen because this is what I want it to be. You'll find very quickly that you are not in charge, that there's actually something else inside which is saying, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to follow the timetable and I'm not going to do it. So that's a good starting point, is to set a very, very simple timetable, not too elaborate, otherwise it gets very complicated. And what we were always told in the Zen school is give yourself one day off a week. So Saturday, Sunday, whatever it might be, that's the day you can do what you like, go to bed when you like, get up when you like, have a day off from sitting, because otherwise you start getting very attached to your timetable, and then it becomes another attachment, another strengthening of that I. So 6 days a week, have a timetable. The 7th day, just relax. So the timetable is a good thing. Working with the fires. Now, we had a little go at this when we did the paperclip game, where we learned about how often we say no to things. And we have also learned through a little bit of bowing that sometimes giving into things and just bowing allows us to accept the things that are happening. So working with the fires, when those fires, those passions, those poisons start to rise up in us, that fire of anger, that fire of wanting, that fire of delusion, once you start becoming more aware of what's going on in the inner household, once you start developing a little bit of awareness, you become aware of these fires almost as a physical sense. If I'm starting to get cross with somebody, I can feel the tightness now starting to come in my chest. It's actually a physical sensation. And you can actually feel it starting to build up. When you feel those fires rising in you, the fire of greed, of ignorance, of wanting, then rather than letting it burn, going back into that burning house the Buddha told us about, rather than discharging that uncomfortable energy by knocking your neighbor off his stool at the bar, or kicking the door, or slamming it, or banging the cup down with a little bit more annoyance, just hold it and bow into it. You can bow into it physically, or even just mentally, inwardly give a little bow and just hold on to that energy, and do not let it discharge itself into banging and slamming, stomping around, harsh words, even mean, grumpy thoughts. If you can, hold on to the energy, because these energies, these passions, can be gentled and transformed and stilled and transformed into the Buddha nature that we're really searching for. You can gentle those fires, those energies, and transform them. So anger can be gentled and stilled, and can be turned into compassion. Ignorance can be turned into wisdom. Wanting can be turned into, I've forgotten the word now, equanimity. That's right. You can, but you have to train yourself. You have to learn. You have to practice holding on to those energies, those fires, and holding on to them and holding on to them and letting them burn away that sense of I, that sense of I, me, and mine. I imagine it as me, I, that sense of I as a spiky little ball of energy. And as you rub against the fires, rub against the passions, that it starts grinding away the sticky, spiky points. And eventually that sense of I starts to soften and loosen and erode. And you can only do that if you're prepared to work with these passions rather than ignoring them, which is what we do half of our lives, or simply discharging them into rage and annoyance or sulking or whatever it might be. So hold on to those fires, hold them, keep them still within you, bow into them, and little by little, it will get easier. So before I began my Buddhist training, I still am, an angry person. I remember once I was on a motorbike or scooter, actually. I was coming from the hospital I was then working in, coming back into central London, and someone cut me up on the slip road of the A road. Cars zipped past and, nearly knocked me off my bike. And I was so angry. I shot after this guy and up to the windscreen and so angry. And then that reminds me then of a Zen story about a samurai. The samurai warriors were very interested in Zen training because it was very much part of their, their Bushido, the samurai code, and a lot of samurais did do Zen training as part of their samurai training. And one particular samurai decided that he would actually give up the life of a samurai, which was basically a mercenary fighter for his liege lord in medieval Japan. And he would join the Buddhist monastery and actually become a monk. And this was a very shameful thing to do, very shameful, to leave your liege lord and give up your samurai ways. But some years later, when he was traveling along as a monk going on his alms round, he met one of his former samurai companions coming down the road, and the samurai saw him and recognized him as the former samurai warrior, and he got his sword and he was just about to cut off his head. And then he said, "No, I'm not going to sully my beautiful sword with your miserable blood." Put the sword away and spat in the monk's face and went on his way, whereupon the monk simply sort of wiped the spittle off. And then he thought, back in the day when I was a samurai, I would not have been able to bear that. I would have had to take revenge on him, or we would have fought and one of us would have killed the other. Whereas now, it's happened, I'm just carrying on. And he turned back to the monastery where his teacher was, and he said, the way is the same as of old, and the mountain is still there, but verily what has changed is my own human heart. So that's a story about how a samurai transformed into a Zen monk through training. I haven't transformed into a Zen monk through training, but I would never chase a car down the slip road of a motorway and bang on the window in fury now. So little by little, the Buddhist practice has made me a slightly more tolerant person, less likely to react to those kind of road rage things. And then finally, and this is the big one, giving oneself wholeheartedly into what at this moment is being done. This is easy to do if the thing that you're doing is life or death, like rock climbing or walking on a tightrope, or if the thing you're doing is very engrossing, like you're reading a good book or watching a film. But if the thing you're doing is frankly very boring and mundane, like doing the ironing or something of that sort, it's so easy to get drifting away into thoughts, stick on a podcast, anything other than stick with the boring thing that you're having to do here and now. Well, part of the practice to be here and now is to give yourself wholeheartedly into that thing. Give yourself into the ironing, really iron. Give yourself into washing the dishes. Be really present as you're washing that cup, as you're drying things up. Don't just skip through the next 5 minutes of this dull activity while you listen to the radio or talk to someone or listen to the podcast. Just do the thing, dry the cup, iron the shirt, whatever it might be present. Otherwise, you will one day wake up and you'll find, wow, where did the last 50 years go? Well, I wasn't really present. I was away in my thoughts doing this, that, and the other. That was my life. Oh, should have lived it. Yeah, you should. So give yourself wholeheartedly into what is being done at this very moment, even if that thing is boring and not engaging and you'd rather not be doing it. Just give yourself in, and then the thoughts will come and you'll drift away. But give yourself back in. You'll do this in your sitting meditation. You come back to the breathing, you come back to the breathing, you come back to the breathing, think, drift away, come back to the breathing. Practice, practice, practice to be here, be now, be present. Otherwise, before you know it, in a blink of an eye, years have gone by and you think, oh, I didn't really notice. I didn't really notice when my child said her first words to me, or, you'll miss those important things because you won't be present. You will be away in your thoughts, in your imaginations, in your memories. Come back to the present moment and come back, even if the present moment is dull. Be there. Okay, last bit. What are you going to do next? Well, if you want to carry on with a Buddhist practice, then I do encourage you to do so, but please don't feel obliged. We're not a proselytizing religion, and if it doesn't suit, it doesn't suit. But if you've stayed the course and you want to go on further, then we have a few more things on offer. So the first thing on offer, and I think it's now or it's just coming to an end, but once a year we have the intermediate course called the First Turning of the Wheel, which is a course, an 8-week course, which is studying some of the Buddha's key teachings, so some of the important sutras. So you go into the actual teaching of the Buddha in depth and learn about those things. But more importantly, I want to talk to you about the summer school, which is every week in August in the Royal Agricultural College in Cirencester, which is a beautiful place, absolutely beautiful. So this is a residential week of Buddhist teaching and practice, but it's not hard. It's not like going on a meditation retreat. There is a little meditation. There's some talks, but it's actually nice to have a holiday in the country for Buddhists, and it's a lovely part of the country to be. It's like an Oxbridge College, actually, the Royal College of Agriculture, and I'm told that it's very good value, and there are bursaries for young people to attend. So please go to the Buddhist Society website and have a look. It's a really lovely thing to do, and it'll really, really kickstart your Buddhist practice in a really good and powerful way. And you'll get to meet some lovely fellow Buddhists and go through some of the core teachings from different schools, not one particular school represents there. All the different schools come and do different teachings there. So really great thing to do. I do encourage you to do this if you can. And then we have classes, many meditation classes. You can meditate almost any day with us. So the basic meditation classes are on a Thursday evening, also Monday and Friday lunchtimes. And then there are some specific meditation classes. So the Theravadins meet on a Monday evening. So they're meeting now at the Buddhist Society and online. The Zen group meet on a Monday evening. And that class and the Theravada classes for society members. So you do have to join to come to those classes. But the Zen group also have periodic Sunday meditation, so a whole day of meditation, teaching and practice on a Sunday, and that's free to anybody to join those. And there's a morning meditation class as well on Zoom, which you can join. The Tibetan meditation classes are held on Thursday evenings, and the Pure Land class happens periodically on Sunday afternoons. So you'll find lots and lots of stuff that the Buddhist Society is offering through the different schools. You can see which particular school appeals to you, Theravada, Zen, Tibetan. I'm not promoting one over another. They're different things, different appeal to different people, that you can really find almost anything you need through the Buddhist Society. But outside of the Buddhist Society, there are other groups you might want to explore. So the Theravadins, there's a huge Theravada monastery up near Hemel Hempstead called Amaravati, and they also have sessions and things you can join, and they also do retreats there. So that's their website, amaravati.org. The Tibetans, I think some of you already part of this group. So Roy Sutherwood, who also teaches the introducing course, is part of the Jamyang Tibetan group, who meet down in a nice building down near Elverton Castle. It's an old court house. So that's the Jamyang Buddhist group, the Tibetan group. The Pure Land group meet in a house in Acton, and that's the threewheels.org.uk. So if you want to look at some Pure Land work, that will be the place to go. And the Zen group have a temple in St John's Wood. That's their website, rinzaizencentre.org.uk, and they also have a temple up in Luton. So other places you can go which are not part of the Buddhist Society but affiliated to the Buddhist Society. So we're just fractionally over time, but we've come to the end of our course. So just to keep it super simple, this is literally all you have to do to do a Buddhist practice. Ceasing to do evil, cultivating the good, purifying the heart. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. So that is all it is, all that's required. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to spend 2 minutes only on questions, if there are any, because I need to go off and do the cooking. Yes, I have some questions here. Danina, I think you was first. Do you want to go ahead with your question?
Actually, my name is John.
John, yes, John. Yeah. Sorry, yes, Danina and John. Yes, John.
Yes, yeah. I just want to ask what exactly is a proselytizing religion? Is that one where it says that one has to convert or else?
Yes, that's right. Proselytizing, when we're basically out looking for converts, and we're not trying to do that. This is what's on offer, and take it or leave it as you will. But Buddhists are not here to drag you in and say, "Come and join us. This is the only way." That's not what we want to do at all. Take what's useful from Buddhism, but if it isn't useful to you, then that's fine. You've also asked, what if I join the Theravada class without being a member? If you want to join the Theravada class at the Buddhist Society, you do have to be a member of the society. Would I be removed from that meeting as a non-member? You might be. I remember someone being asked to leave the Zen group. Oof, that was as a non-member. That was some years ago. Yes, there are classes which are available to non-members, but the Theravadan class and the Zen class are members only. Can you have a dual practice, i.e. with another religious practice? Yes, you can. The Dalai Lama himself said, don't use the Buddhist teachings to be a better Buddhist. You can use the teachings to be a better whatever you are. A better Christian, a better Muslim, a better parent. There are things in the Buddhist teaching that will help you to be a better whatever it is you currently are. So no, if you wish to take elements of Buddhism into your own religious tradition, that's fine. That's fine. There are lots of things which are common to other religious traditions. You don't have to sign out from whatever you're doing. But obviously, if you want to follow the Buddha's way, ultimately, you have to have faith and confidence in the Buddhist teachings. But you can certainly have Buddhist, you can take elements of Buddhism into Christian practice, into Judaism, that's fine. That will be fine. We're 5 minutes over, so I'm going to finish now. Thank you very much for staying the course. I hope you've enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing some of you around the Buddhist Society in the future. So thank you all very much.